Welcome to using extended events. The first thing that people always ask me is, what exactly is extended events? Well, extended events is a new feature in SQL Server, actually introduced in SQL Server 2008, but greatly enhanced in SQL Server 2012 because there's now a user interface that you can use, which makes it much easier to use the extended events feature. Extended events are based on the Windows ETWs. These ETWs are built into all Windows applications, or at least all enterprise class applications. These ETWs are the enterprise timing weights within the system. So this allows any feature of Windows that's configured to use these to log very specific information. The extended events feature allows us to capture this information so we can show it within the SQL Server database engine and use it as necessary. Because this is based on a Windows feature, we can collect this information both inside and outside of the database engine. The extended events feature is only available from within the database engine, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. Now, extended events is a replacement for SQL Server Profiler and the server-side tracing that we've been using for many years now. These features have been deprecated and will be removed at some point in the future. As I'd mentioned, this feature was introduced in SQL Server 2008, but the GUI first came around in SQL Server 2012. Extended events can capture basically anything that Profiler can capture. In addition to that, it can capture just about anything that happens in SQL Server. Things that it can capture very easily are things like log file growths, data file growths, adding new databases, users logging into the system, users making any sort of change to the system. This can all be captured with extended events. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we get an extended event session set up and how we can actually view that information. As you can see, I'm connected to a SQL Server 2012 system. By navigating through the management and then extended events and then session folder options, we can see the various extended event sessions that are created on this instance. To create a new session, we simply right-click and select New Session Wizard. We can go through manually and do this, but that's not required. As you can see, when the wizard opens, we get a very simple welcome screen that tells us what we're going to be able to do here. Click Next. We need to give the extended event session a name. The name can be anything you want. It's simply for your reference. It does need to fit within the normal SQL Server object naming convention. It's recommended to avoid things like spaces because those make it harder for you to create scripts around this option. Keep in mind, anything you do in this wizard is going to create a T-SQL script at the end. Click Next. We can either select to use a template, just like we could in Profiler, or we could select not to use a template. There's only a few templates created by default, but they can still be very handy. In this case, let's go ahead and do it without using a template and select the counters manually. As you can see, there are an awful lot of events that we can capture. We need to know what events we're looking for in order to capture useful information. By typing in the event library search field, we can shorten down the list of things that we're looking for. So let's go ahead and change our search, and we can find different information. So let's go ahead and look for batch completed and statement completed. These are some of the common things you would normally look at in Profiler when looking for specific commands. We click the arrow to move them over, make those the selected events. As you can see, when you select a specific event to capture, you get some basic information about what the event is, as well as all the fields that are going to be available within the event. We can click Next, and we can add additional global actions or global fields. These are things that are available no matter what events you're capturing. So we can capture the database name, if this is a system session, the username that this is running as. We can also collect information that wasn't available before, such as the NUMA node ID that this command is running on, query hash, or even the scheduler ID. As you can see, there's a large variety of global fields that are available to you. We can click Next, and we can now apply filters. These filters allow us to filter down the information that's being captured from the extended event. So if, for example, we want to filter now based on the database that these things were happening in, we could select SQL Server.database name and set the database name value to whatever database we want to filter by. In this case, for example, MSDB. And we click Next. We can then tell SQL Server where we want to save this information. We can either save this to a file for later viewing, and we can select a path for the file, how big we want the file to be, and if we want the file to be able to roll over to additional files. We can specify the maximum number of files before the session turns itself off automatically. We can also save the data to memory within the SQL Server into what's called the ring buffer. This allows us to simply read the data from the ring buffer without actually having to write it to the disk. We can specify how much space the ring buffer should be able to use for this event data, after which point the data will simply be discarded from memory. Let's go ahead and just write this data to the memory. Then click Next, and this will let us view all the various information that we've selected. If we click the script option, we'll get the T-SQL script. We'll go ahead and create the session from the T-SQL script. As you can see, this fairly simple session takes quite a lot of T-SQL to get set up. That's because for each event that we add, we have to specify all the specific actions we want, with a filter for each specific event. As you can see, this scrolls over quite a long ways. Let's go ahead and create this, and then refresh the Object Explorer to see it pop up. We then need to start the session so that it begins collecting information. At this point, the event session is running and it's capturing information. Now, the nice thing about extended events is when we're capturing information with extended events, unless we're capturing very expensive things like the execution plan for queries and various other things like that, this is extremely lightweight to capture. The reason for that is because these ETWs are firing in the background no matter what. We're simply telling SQL Server that we want to capture this information that's already being generated. To view this information, the easiest way is to simply right-click on the session and click Watch Live Data. This simply queries the system in real time to get the information and display it to us. So now that we've got the live data being viewed, let's go ahead and generate some queries. We'll just flip over to the MSDB database and run some select statements. As you can see, once we've run our query, the data then shows up in the capture. All the information that we specified is being shown at the bottom, and the specific event is shown at the top. Extended Events is a replacement for SQL Server Profiler and server-side tracing. If you haven't started using it, start. It's going to be extremely important in the future as SQL Server Profiler is going to be removed from the product. Normally, adding extended event sessions is an extremely low-load thing to do. Some events and actions can take a lot of resources to capture. Specifically, things like the execution plan can be very expensive and can drive up the CPU load on the server if you start capturing them. So be very careful about what you're capturing. Always make sure that you're filtering down so that you're only capturing the exact information that you need.